Welcome to part 2 of how to make a wrestling belt. In this video I will show you the full tooling process of a leather strap. I start the tooling process by tooling around the creased edge I made towards the end of part 1. I place the tool approximately 2mm inside the creased edge. The stamp is called a Camouflage Sunburst and was used on many Midwest belts during the 1980s and 1990s. The following footage shows the end of the sunburst tooling stage. Following on from that process, I now tool around the same circumference of the strap. This time I tool along the creased edge with the beveler facing inwards. The stamp used is called a checked beveler and creates a 45-degree angled impression on the leather with a tiny dotted effect. You will notice that when the tool passes over the leather after it has been tapped with the mallet, it leaves not only the effect the stamp produces, but also the leather turns a shade of darkened brown colour. This is known as bruising. I continue to bevel inwards all the way around the circumference of the creased edge until complete. I now move on to the male side of the strap. The checkered beveler is now used throughout the whole tooling process. I only switch out for a narrower beveler in the tight areas. The narrower check beveler is handy around the curved corners on the logo plate area, as seen in the video. Once that is complete, I repeat the process on the male side, following all the lines I made in part 1. The female snapbox is the next task. Tooling inwards along the outer line all around the circumference with the checkered beveler. Next is a small pear shading stamp around the second inside line. This tool gives a nice effect and when tooled gives the line a 3D effect. Now that is complete, I move on to the larger pear shader. The inside of the female snapbox is now shaded in entirely in a random effect. This is another classic Midwest trait. The whole process done on the female Snapbox is now repeated on the male side of the strap. The only difference is that on the male side there is the end of this belt to a tool around where my logo is stamped on the leather. At this stage the leather is 90% tooled. The last job to do now is to tool over every line along the edge, the logo plate, the snap boxes, basically every line where the checkered beveler has touched the strap. But this time I tool in the opposite direction. This tooling is done with a smooth beveler stamp. I tool outwards on the edges. This gives the edges depth and a lovely 3D effect. That is the conclusion of all the tooling. The last thing to do now is to burnish the edges. Before I burnish, I need to cut off the waste leather from the end of the strap. Once it is cut off, I neaten up the cut with some sandpaper. Burnishing is the process of buffing leather edges to create a slick, glossy finish. I begin the process by removing the square edge that was left earlier in part 1, when the leather was cut with my craft knife. I use an edge beveling tool. This is held at a 45° angle to the cut edge. I then proceed to push the beveler against the edge, and the sharp blade removes a consistent bead of leather from the edge. This is done all the way around the circumference of the strap. Once the edge has been beveled, I go over the edges with a wooden burnishing or slicking tool. As you can see, I wet the edge as I go around. Wetting the edge helps flatten the leather fibres, and when the burnisher is rubbed against the edge it creates friction, and the edges smooth and become like a gloss finish, and super smooth. Burnishing is a very time-consuming part of the job, but also very important. Once the burnishing is complete, I finally go over the edges with some low grit sandpaper and a moulding tool, just to be sure the edges are perfectly rounded. That concludes part 2 of how to make a real wrestling belt. Please keep a lookout for part 3 where I will show the final stages of this belt being completed. Title line sponsored by Daniel Ripley Championship Belts, Beltmasters Wrestling Belt Collectors, Seath Authentic Belts, Gorilla Gems and Stones by Bones.